Hello everyone, this is Gemini Jets 1975 coming at you with another video today. This time is a installment of the Liveries and Aircraft series, this time on TWA. I think you'll be very interested in this video. Before I get started, I need to make a couple shout-outs and a correction. Yesterday, when I made the video on the United 737-900, I failed to mention that Gemini Jets 12 correctly answered the trivia question about the Delta 737-200. So I'm going to correct that now. Congrats to Gemini Jets 12. Please, everyone, he is a huge supporter of my channel. I'd very much appreciate it if you guys would give him a subscribe. Go check him out. He's got some very cool model reviews and a very cool airport. So please, guys, do me a favor and go subscribe to Gemini Jets 12. He's awesome. So anyways, guys, the other shout outs, I made a shout out to Surreal Ubing the other day also. He wanted me to shout out his brother, Ivo Ubing, has 2 channels. Ivo Ubing is the personal channel where he talks about random stuff, and Ivo the Gamer is a gaming channel about Skylanders. So if you like Skylanders and gaming content, go check out Ivo the Gamer. Anyways, that should do it for these shoutouts, and let me get started with the video. Well, guys, TWA. TWA was a pioneering airline in more ways than one. Probably the biggest thing, TWA was once owned by Howard Hughes. He decided that he wanted to control an airline, so he bought controlling interest in TWA, and he ran it personally and had other people run it for him. And then eventually, in the 1960s, the board got tired of his nonsense and basically kicked him out. And then later on, he was forced to sell his interest in the airline, and they were really never the same after that. But they, during the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and part of the 70s, they were one of only 2 airlines to fly across the Atlantic. The U.S. government basically had them on a quasi-monopoly with Pan Am, and, you know, they reaped the benefits and made huge profits. Actually, they trailed Pan Am in traffic until the 1970s. And then after that, when the U.S. government began to allow other airlines to fly across the Atlantic, they did not carry as much traffic. Then, of course, terrorism in the 1980s, that was pretty much the end of it. Their coveted London Heathrow slots were sold to American. Oddly enough, American ended up buying them out, but that's a whole nother story. Anyway, let's get started with this video. So, TWA, they had one other major livery during the jet age. It was called the Twin Globe. It was basically, I didn't really like it, but it had a stripe, and then on the tail there was, you know, it had the letter, the initials TWA, and then 2 yellow globes, the western and the eastern hemisphere, next to each other. And in, I want to say it might have been the late 60s, but in the more than likely in the 70s, they introduced this livery, which they carried into the 1980s and early 1990s. So basically, you have your two two red stripes on the lower half of the fuselage. Then you got Transworld. If you watched one of my earlier, I think it was the October, one of my Gemini Just released videos for the DC-9, Transworld was outlined. This is one of those liveries that I'm speaking of. It was a what do you call it? Experimental version of this livery. So you got Transworld colored in red. Then your sheet lines here widen down the fuselage till you get to the back end, and if you look on the bottom, they kind of taper off. One kind of trails into the bottom, and then the other one down the back end of the plane. So, and then on the tail, of course, you have on this particular, the 727, the registration on the nacelle of the engine, the American flag, and then the red TWA, or the white TWA with the red background. So that was basically the main TWA livery for, well, the majority of my, or definitely my childhood, and a little bit before that. So 727s, TWA used extensively on their domestic routes. So let's go on to the next aircraft. The 747 SP was, TWA attempted to, they applied for, I want to say it was New York, JFK, Riyadh, non-stop. No, it wasn't Riyadh. New York, JFK to, it was kind of like the oil run that Braniff applied for in the 70s, but it was JFK to one of the cities in Saudi Arabia, I believe, and they obviously did not get it. And soon after, they sold these aircraft, but they did use them a little bit, believe, on transatlantic routes. And then, of course, when they didn't get it, they sold them. But kind of an interesting side note, just a little variation in TWA's fleet. Now, the next plane, the L-1011, TWA ran these into the ground almost as much as Delta did. These were all retired by the time TWA merged with American, and they used these all over. I know the first time I flew into Orlando, which was about 1992, I flew American, and there were wide bodies all over the place. It was so cool. There were TWA wide bodies that they flew them from JFK and St. Louis. There were American DC-10s. There were Delta L-1011s all over everywhere. A lot of the U.S. airlines, back in those days, flew tons and tons of wide bodies all over everywhere, and TWA was no exception. But that was another kind of a cool thing about the 80s and 90s in the U.S. And then this particular plane, this is not an MD-80, although I think it's the DC-950. This was also another mainstay of the Transworld domestic fleet, again out of St. Louis, and I think they flew some of them out of JFK too, but because Pan Am and TWA, they kind of had, almost all of before the invention of feeder airlines, they flew their own domestic routes, connecting feeding routes out of their international hubs in JFK. So Okay, the next to the last is this is TWA's final livery. This was a very, very cool livery. I believe it was introduced in 1990. It was either 94 or 95. So, TWA kind of started a renaissance of itself after that. You got blue, gold, and then, blue, gold, and then red on the bottom half of the aircraft. And then you got this stylized looking globe as their center logo, and then Trans World in big letters. And then the red, gold, and blue kind of go all the way down the aircraft, and then it swoops up onto the tail, and then you got TWA in the initials on the tail. So you got Trans World, and then TWA, and then the American flag. And this, I think, it looks really bad on a couple aircraft, but I really did like this livery. I did get to see it at DFW a couple times. It was kind of cool. Of course, I saw the original too, but the 767-300, they use those a lot on your transatlantic routes, and I don't remember if they flew it St. Louis to Honolulu, but I think possibly because they flew the 747 on that for a while. St. Louis to London Gatwick, I think they had this. I think they might have had the 767-300 on that. So I don't know if American still has any of these aircraft left. But anyway, next, or last but not least, this is the transition livery after American purchased TWA. And oddly enough, Delta ended up with most of these aircraft. The N708 TW. These were basically 757s with extra fuel tanks to allow for transatlantic flight. Because that's what TWA was going to use them for out of JFK, like JFK to Lisbon, and I think that's the main one that comes to mind. But so you have basically the American. This is the American old livery, obviously. Red, white, and blue cheat lines with an American Airlines company. TWA as the carrier operating the aircraft. And then swooping up, you got TWA on the tail. So you took away most of this livery, and then you left the TWA name on the tail, and then had the American Airlines cheat lines over the rest of the aircraft. So, but yeah, if you know if any of these 757s wound up with any other airline besides Delta, if American even kept some of them, because I think maybe they did, let me know in the comments. That would be kind of interesting to know. So, but anyways, guys, TWA, yeah, they were an incredibly, they were an incredibly, what's the word? They pioneered a lot in American aviation, and they were very well known for service. A lot of stars used to fly TWA. They used to be called TWA Airline of the Stars, and because a lot of Hollywood used to fly them. Howard Hughes was a movie director also while he was gallivanting around, buying airlines and stuff like that. And of course, after TWA kicked him out, he bought Air West, but that was towards the end of his life. But anyway, long story there. And as far as any other videos. I also plan on having one of these on Eastern. I might even have this all by the way is all of my TWA fleet. So if you want me to do a models by airline on this, I can definitely do that. I'm not sure how quickly I will get that done for you, but so. Well, guys, sorry, I really don't have a trivia question in mind. If you have one that you want me to ask, by all means, please comment below, and I can ask that in a future video. So, anyways, I don't really have anything else to say, so thank you guys for watching as always. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video.